Hello guys, this is Dark Fox Sage 2 and we are back with our new fanfic, which is What If Mito Fell in Love with Man She Took Care of Part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and please subscribe to the channel. It motivates me to upload more fanfic like these for you all. Now let's start the fanfiction. Naruto sat down on the love seat, scratching his head in confusion. Though, he bore a smile to sway the woman across from him from asking any questions. Her return had caused feelings to surface. There were some odd, somewhat conflicting emotions rummaging about in him. Judging by Mito's relieved expression, she had no idea that he was a little angry. He guessed that either she was terrible at gauging others, or that he wasn't so transparent. Maybe it had something to do with her being tired, but he liked to think it was all of them. That wasn't exactly the highest of his concerns. He should be more angry. Hell, he wanted to be more enraged. Being imprisoned and getting his mind searched without his consent, which in fact, he probably would have given them permission to do because he wanted to find out whom he was. That's what he identified in himself. It made him a little puzzled at that. That was not the abundant feeling in him though. It was relief. Assured. What's the word? He just felt like it wasn't that big of a deal. Everything that had occurred to him over the past month, regardless whether it was painstakingly boring, it just seemed better. The hell? Yeah, that sure was an odd thought. Better than what? All he obtained was a blank memory and something else retarded to deal with. He wanted answers now, damn it. Troublesome. Naruto mumbled. He could only lament at how perfect that word suited his predicament. Pardon? Mito asked. Deciding not to reveal those thoughts, he asked something else he was curious about. So when's the old fart going to come around? She had an expression of bewilderment. That's my grandfather you're talking about, replying sternly. I didn't mean it in a bad way. I mean I finally get to meet the guy. You know, you always talk about him. He did help raise you and your sister, right? He seems pretty cool and stuff. Mito looked subdued, obviously drowsy. She merely sighed. He did, but if you say so, I hope you don't refer to him that way, but he should be here in a minute or so. He smirked. None of his earlier frustration seemed to have returned. Be more angry, damn it. It was too late, however. He could feel himself merely accepting it. He sighed, raising a brow from Mito. So what else could you tell me about the Uzumaki clan? Asking something to pass the time, and to fill the void of silence that made him slightly uncomfortable. Noise made everything better in his opinion. Anything specific? I dunno, it's not like I remember anything, Naruto stated. Right. Perhaps I should generalize about the way of life before the village, he nodded, mentioning for her to continue. I suppose it can be said of other clans as well, but I can't be certain. If there was one thing he knew, it was that she liked to be knowledgeable. She could probably flaunt herself because he didn't know a lot of things, but she didn't give off that feeling. He was a perfect subject, mainly because of his amnesia. Hopefully. Our people were semi-nomadic, never staying in an area for too long. He was about to ask why before she explained it. We were not the largest clan nor the most powerful, so we couldn't stay in one area for too long, lest we be discovered and destroyed. Our clan is knowledgeable with seals, however, so we're fairly confident that our location could be kept secret for the time being. She droned on a little more, so he felt like he shouldn't have suggested that topic. It wasn't that it wasn't a little interesting, but he did like to talk sometimes too. He would have stopped her, but he did like the way she talked. Firm, with carefully articulated words, quiet but with just enough volume. His head certainly felt a little weird. She seemed to have finished talking, and he had no idea what were her last words. So he went for a different approach. So what's up with Emmy? Is she not a ninja? I mean, how did that happen? He might as well humor her a bit, at least until her grandfather came. She gave pause, likely figuring out what to say with her response. How do we think we grow? She asked rhetorically. People are married into the clan. We are most often staying near a town to easily replenish supplies or to guard them. My own father himself was married into the clan. Not all aged civilians could be trained, however, or as effectively, but we did need professions to sustain ourselves better, rather than rely exclusively on the income of missions from feudal lords. Some clans did dissolve with lack of forethought when they couldn't sustain themselves at rough times. Not really what he asked, but he got some insight concerning her family. Thankfully, she answered his question next. She smiled sadly. As with the situation with Emi, she was often plagued with sickness in her youth. Highly unusual, especially with one of Uzumaki descent. Her voice was softer. I helped care for her when our parents were gone, along with my grandfather. Emi was much shorter than her elder sister, so that might have helped their height, despite their 2-year difference. He gave a wide smile. You really care for her, don't you? I think you did a pretty great job. Man, I wonder if I have any siblings. I think I would be the coolest brother ever. She gave a more genuine smile this time, however small that it was. It was definitely an improvement in his opinion. A knock sounded on the door at that moment, and Mito quickly stood up to answer it. A gruff old man stepped inside. His aged appearance and serious expression spoke of pressing matters. However, it seemed his eyes spoke a little differently though. Naruto also noted he was younger than he initially thought, and also he had a good beard going on. The aged man walked over to him, Mito trailing behind him. My name is Shin Uzumaki, grandfather of Mito right here. It's nice to finally meet you. His hand held between them for a handshake. Naruto quickly stood up, grabbing the gruff man's hand. What's up, old man? He smiled in amusement at the sharp intake of breath of Mito. Her eyes widened in surprise, glaring kunai at him. Name's Naruto. I would tell you more, but I don't really have a damn idea of anything else other than that. Shin's expression didn't change, but he could see the nearly hidden amusement in his surprisingly lively eyes. Naruto was also aware of Mito's hilarious reaction, worrying about her grandfather's response. He wasn't concerned about it though. Shin let out a hearty chuckle. I suppose we can be casual. It's a good thing too. I'm weary of all the formalities in the past few weeks. Naruto smirked. Alright, that's great. That's too much work for me too. I'd probably wouldn't do it even if I was forced to. Shin nodded in agreement, along with a laugh. Mito was seemingly surprised, but she shook her head and seated herself on the couch opposite of him, along with Shin. He didn't seem to be in trouble at the moment, at least, until Shin left the room. I just wanted to formally apologize, he started. What for? Naruto asked. That person didn't follow through on my specific orders. He's a person who wished to protect his village, the older man laughed. I probably should have written down the exact orders for Mito to receive, but I wanted to strengthen our clan's ties. Oh, that's alright really. Trust is important, right? He nodded in agreement. It's a bit different than from what I'm used to. Multiple clans under my care. We were never in a position when we had to attack each other before the villages formed. So we're just on shaky terms. Well, I think you will do pretty well. I mean, you're old, so you should know stuff, right? Naruto replied. Mito had a somewhat agreeing look with that. She would have probably said it differently though, with more needlessly complicated words. Mito watched the exchange between her grandfather and Naruto. Their discussion ranged from various unimportant subjects, from food, stories, and his circumstance. Casual, it seemed, which she participated in with a little. Ah, yes, before I forget, may I see you perform the seal on that kunai? Her grandfather asked. Sure, Naruto replied. A blink later revealed that he magnificently disappeared. It was quite the sight to see. Her sensory ability revealed that he was nearby, in his room. That sure is. Shin seemed impressed. He exchanged a particular look. He was caught. She kept herself calm. It seemed he grandfather remembered something she had forgotten. He merely shrugged. There's something about him. He played with his beard. I had a sensory type track him with specific orders, but he reported nothing that would endanger us, he added. There was a reason why he was entrusted care of the village. A secondary plan if the first should fail. Are you? She started to ask, but Shin merely shook his head. Naruto came waltzing it back in before any more could be said. Mito carefully observed her grandfather. He was surprisingly relaxed. Even in the presence of someone new. It was like this with her sister as well. This was more significant, however. So she could only guess that Naruto wasn't in any sort of danger. Naruto sat down once again across from them, the tri-pronged kunai in his hand. Smirking as he looked at the looks that he got from her grandfather. From her as well, it was no wonder he could easily bypass the seal around the apartment. Emi had helped obviously. Emi suddenly appeared through the unlocked door, making everyone turn towards her. Naruto, I can't believe you just left me out there. I had to walk all the way over here alone. Oh, sorry. Naruto apologized, rubbing the nape of his neck. I'm not sure what to say, I just forgot. Mito could only feel amused. Even if Naruto didn't hastily reveal his technique, Emi would have blown his cover wide open. Her grandfather sent glances around the room, inspecting the others, bemused. The blonde seating across from her still hadn't caught on just yet. She replied, her hands firmly placed on her hips. Her eyes widened when she saw their grandfather, but she quickly masked herself. Hey sis, grandpa. Finally nice to see you all back. Momentarily distracted, Shin gave a warm greeting, along with everyone else. It's okay, Emi, she hinted, from which she quickly caught on. She was immediately relaxed, also seeing that her Shin writing seemed to be displeased in any way. Emi nodded and turned back to Naruto once more. Did you forget about me? Because Mito came back, she turned towards the blonde, expecting something from him. Yeah, he spoke honestly and bluntly. She was surprised by that response, and was honestly. She scared the hell out of me, he continued. I mean, I had no idea what to do, so I tried to distract her with this thing, displaying the kunai in his hand. She gathered herself as quickly as she could. She ignored him as her sister laughed and take a seat beside the blonde. It is fun teleporting around like that, especially if you do it fast. She took a loud sigh. So what was going on? Mito briefly took a moment to explain the gist of things. Shin cleared his throat. Naruto, I was going to ask how it worked. You didn't seem to perform any hand seals when you did it. The whiskered man gave a blank stare. What the hell are seals? With hands? Mito nudged in, letting out a chuckle. He seems to be able to do it without understanding some of the basics. That's interesting, Shin commented. Tell me, what can you tell me of it? Perhaps we can deduce the origins. It took a moment for him to reply. Well, all I know that it involves time and space, but I don't know how or why. I have to concentrate on one of them, because I think something bad will happen otherwise. You also have to visualize and position yourself or you land on your ass, he nodded sagely but otherwise continued. I can bring someone else with me too, so I can do that stuff for them. I wonder how big I can bring something with me or how far. I'm not sure any of that would actually help. I don't think I know anything else honestly. Naruto also knows the shadow clone jutsu, Mito added. I do, he said. What's that? It sounds pretty cool. One of the jutsu from Tobirama Senju. Shin reflected. Mito quickly explained to Naruto who he was, the brother of Hashirama. Shin thought for a couple moments, as Naruto and Emi began to talk a little more. That technique could certainly become quite powerful in the right hands and used correctly. Someone could easily bypass any barriers that may have been placed in any area, as long as they're not physical barriers. Well, Shin started, the others grew attentive. Her grandfather turned serious, straightening his poster and raised his voice to a more leadership level. Naruto, if it turns out that you are not from Konohagakure, then I extend an offer for you to join our village and clan. She was not expecting that. It was now obvious that he approved him of going to Konoha. Looking over to Naruto, she saw her surprised sister looking expectantly at him too. He was actually relaxed, and not being jubilant as she thought he would. Maybe he didn't understand the importance or significance. So I would be an Uzumaki then? Naruto simply asked. Yes, you would be, if you chose so. Huh. Naruto leaned back, sighing. His chakra was reminiscent of one. Except, there were plenty of signs going towards that he was from Konohagakure. Perhaps someone in the clan had disappeared off and entered the Senju clan that would explain his jacket. To remember their origins, so he should be recognized by someone when they got to Konoha. It should be that simple. Shin stood up from the couch, heading towards the door. Well, I suppose it's my time to say goodbye for now. Mito, you and the others will be leaving in a week's time, along with Naruto, of course. Naruto joined in. Later, old guy, joining in on the farewell with them, much louder than necessary as Shin chuckled and left the building. I can't believe you kept calling him that, Mito stated. Well, he's old. That's true. Emi agreed. Mito looked at her sister. Don't encourage him. Naruto stood up exuberantly. Ah well, whatever. Who wants to get some ramen? Effectively ending the conversation, she stood up, not really minding what was for dinner. Today, she needed to rest and help train Naruto. She guessed that it wouldn't take too long. He did perform a jutsu that seemed complex to master. Holy shit, it's hot! Naruto yelled. With surprising speed, he proceeded to strip right before her. Before she could properly react or avert her eyes, he already had the majority of his clothes disregarded and with the help of a chakra-induced jump, performed a cannonball into the lake water. Sighing, she wiped off the sweat building on her brow and walked to shoreline. She had no clothes to change into, but putting her feet into the water would be sufficient enough to cool off. After she took off her socks and sandals, she submerged her feet. Today was certainly hotter than she had initially thought, so it was relieving to cool herself off in the water. Birds sung their song loudly in the trees. The water gleamed brilliantly from the brightness of the sun. So far it was a pleasant day. It wasn't really a beach, but there were some dry sand before the higher patch of land. She took a seat on a nearby partially submerged rock. It probably would have been perfect if they were not training. Naruto was still somewhere underneath the surface, and had been for a couple of minutes. He came about for fresh air a moment later. That's much better, letting out a pleased sigh. He swam relaxingly a while as they both cooled off, partaking in some small talk in their break for the meantime. Her mind wandered randomly, not particularly staying on one subject for long. She remembered talking to her grandfather about why he had offered Naruto to join the village. He simply explained that it was because she trusted him, but it was a last-minute decision of his. There was also that he didn't seem to mean any harm to anyone. You're comfortable with him too, he added when she gave her observations. She had known that. She looked over the relaxing atmosphere. Mito had come to this place in particular in mind, a small freshwater lake with a nearby clearing for spars. It was suitable for training. There was some newly built training grounds near the village, but were reserved for the up-and-coming young ninja. For now, until others were created. The lake was for water walking. Surprisingly, he had some trouble with the tree walking technique, taking him an entire day to get it done. He did, however, kept going, without a single break. Perhaps she was too optimistic about him being a natural at everything. How does someone like Naruto, capable of performing an advanced sealing technique, struggle with a simple exercise? She couldn't pinpoint him sometimes. The water walking technique was a little more difficult than the initial one, and he also had no talent for combat, if their earlier relaxed spars were of any indication. She had initially started from the top, of more advanced techniques. To see if he remembered any of his training, it was fruitless however. So they had to start from the bottom tier. At least she wasn't teaching a civilian as he had a better grasp on some mechanics. He was still a ninja, albeit poor one with his amnesia. If she didn't get him up to speed on combat, he might be a possible liability of the off chance that battles were to occur. It wasn't too much of a problem, but it certainly would add some unnecessary trouble to an all-shinobi group. It also wouldn't bode well with Hashirama when she went all the way with asking him to house a potentially useless person who couldn't help with their research. After several minutes, she decided that it was time to resume Naruto's training. Naruto, she called out, seeing him still swimming in the water. What's up? He voiced, his water-soaked bang nearly hid his eyes. Come back to the shore, I want to show you something, no need to put on your clothes. After a quick return, he popped out from the water. He was obviously lean, like a shinobi should be at the least. Now conscious of his appearance, she averted her eyes. Luckily her small little glance was left unnoticed by him. He stood there expectantly with shining curiosity. Standing from out of the water, she channeled chakra to her feet. This is the next exercise you'll be accomplishing. Taking steps out into the surface, water rippling as she walked further out, a nice distance away for him to reach. When she turned around, Mito once again found his face filled with some awe. Alright, I'm totally gonna learn that. That's cool, he said, preparing to walk before she had a chance to explain, falling straight into the shallow water. He splashed around before he surfaced once more. At least let me explain, she said to him. Right, go ahead, as he stepped out. His expression filled with eagerness and surprising determination. Channel chakra to your feet like the tree walking exercise, but this time it needs to be continually flowing and constantly adjust with the water. She explained a little more of the mechanics of before he tried once again. His eyes closed in concentration as he focused on collecting his chakra. She seen a sight that was most curious. She inched closer to him. Oblivious to the ever-widening steps she took to place herself in a better position. A seal, black as ink, was quickly becoming apparent on his abdomen. It fully formed, but it seemed cracked, broken. Some lines were misplaced, not aligning with the circle that formed. There seemed to be a missing piece associated with the odd seal. What would be 8 muddled little blobs was instead 6. The center of it was completely blackened. She slightly bent down to inspect it, fascinated by the seemingly broken seal. Never seeing such thing like it. A sudden scream made her flinch. Gah! Naruto fell over, making her aware of how close she was. She was just about to bend down to see. She ignored any possible embarrassing connotations with her actions. He babbled incoherently, not that she wanted to find out what he's saying. He quickly stood up. What the hell were you doing? You scared the hell out of me. There was a seal on your stomach. His expression was wary, disbelieving. There's nothing there, as he looked down below. Are you? She interrupted. Just channel chakra and look once again. He hesitated, an odd look formed on his face. Unreadable to her. She gestured pleadingly with her hands to continue with her suggestion. His brow was furrowed, but he did what she had said anyway. As he channeled chakra, he looked below once again. His expression contorting in surprise. Oh cool. What is it? I don't know, but it's a seal. It was all that she could say really. Damn, I'm really tired of that. It's like. He sighed exasperatingly, his hand resting on the back of his head. The seal on his stomach disappearing as he stopped. I can probably check to see what it may be. Another seal that she didn't know. It was nice occasion to try and figure out its properties. Yeah, sure, he concentrated to form chakra. Taking some steps closer to him before she stopped. Quote. Perhaps you should lay down to get comfortable, she suggested. It might take some time to examine. Yeah, right, as he laid on the sand, fidgeting to get himself comfortable. She sat cross-legged beside him. He then sorted to channel chakra once more. The seal becoming visible on his abdomen. Well, this is a little weird, he commented. She ignored him, trying to figure out what the seal accomplished. She already deduced that she might not find much, especially since it was damaged. Her little sealing techniques would give her some results. Some time passed as she performed them, and she watched it disappear before her eyes. Mito looked over at his face, a snore escaping from him. It's only been 15 minutes. Letting out a sigh, she shook him awake. What happened? Naruto asked drowsily. You fell asleep. Oh, well, hurry up. The seal reappeared once more. She guessed that she wouldn't be surprised if he fell asleep again, but she continued to work. She continued with her seals and tried to redraw the seal on his stomach in the sand, seeing as she had no spare piece of parchment nearby. It took a while, but she tried to recreate what might be the appearance of it. It had no power of what it may have been, or anything like it. Just the outline. Done. She carefully double-checked her work. She wasn't able to fully piece it apart and deduce the full extent of its properties, but she felt that it was all that she could do. From what Mito had found out, the jutsu present on his abdomen was meant to seal something in. Not like an item, or something like that. That wouldn't require such a complex seal, or a large one. It was for something living. It was broken, however, whatever it was had escaped. Perhaps that had something to do with his memory lost. A small and weak theory that couldn't be supported, however. Other theories had more strength. Only Kumo, at least that's what had been heard, had created something like that. Is he from Kumo? After a little more thought, it didn't make whole lot of sense. Konoha seemed a whole lot more likely. He fell asleep again, lasting longer than last time, however. She was done, so there was nothing else that could be done. But, perhaps it may have left remnants. Thankful for her sensory abilities, she started a search in the vicinity of the seal. She focused in deeper, looking for anything foreign that was present. It should have been easier to find something that was unique, but she found herself being wrong in her assumption. She had to search several times to even find a trace of it. There was something small, tiny, nearly insignificant. It was difficult to pinpoint what it was. Naruto's chakra was drowning it out with its potency. It was most likely chakra from something, or someone, but she could not identify it. Something up. Because, I've been laying down for forever now, somewhat startling her. I'm finished, she replied. You look and sound disappointed, as he finally sat up, shrugging off some of the sand that clung to him. I guess it didn't really lead anywhere, huh? Or much. It did not. It'll probably become clear when I recover who I am or meet someone, or maybe I'll never remember and it'll forever remain an unsolvable riddle or something like that. What's the point of a riddle if it can't be solved? She retorted. Not finding the answers would leave some insufferable loose ends. Having his memories apparently non-existent was already such a blow. He continued to remember things, however, so he might recall something that was important. I hope I never remember, just to spite you. You can't keep flinching and continuing to run away. You won't be able to defend yourself with such lackluster taijutsu skills, Mito berated the blonde standing across from her. You keep kicking my ass, that's why I'm running away, Naruto whined, rubbing his cheek from an earlier punch. Your form is all over the place, either too stiff or too sloppy, there's not enough power most of the time. I'm no taijutsu specialist, but you're performing below expectations, she rubbed her temple to ease her frustration. There hadn't been a whole lot of progress since then, but they weren't as focused as they were right now. In 2 days' time they were to leave Uzushiogakure. He was still just as terrible since they began. We've trying to do that same thing, over and over again, maybe it's time we try another approach. He suggested. I'm just as frustrated as you. Oh really? What do you think that we should just do then? She asked. He shrugged. I dunno. Helpful. Well, he went quiet for a moment, contemplating his words. Maybe you can bring someone else to teach. Are you saying I'm an atrocious teacher? Mito questioned sternly. What? Where did you get that from? I didn't say anything like that. He scratched his head as Mito tried to calm her nerves. I'm just saying that we should trying something different, other than doing the same few stuff with small differences. I mean, it's not working, is it? I suppose so. As both devolved into silence as they tried to formulate suggestions. She had to admit that Naruto certainly kept going, wearing her out near the end of the day. He was doing more than herself as well. She took pride that she was one of the best kunoichi in the village. Overall, along with the male population too. Mito had to wonder how he was in his natural state. I got it. Emmy once said to me that I should just let things come naturally to me, so maybe we should do that, Naruto recommended. She shook her head, giving her reply. And how are we supposed to go about that if we've attempting that from the beginning? No, you've been telling me what to do and what was wrong, just let me be and figure it out. It didn't look it might succeed, but she might as well humor him. Who knows, it might actually work, but she wasn't going to place all her hopes on it. She readied her stance. Well then, let's try, shall we? He still stood there, however, a hand placed under his chin in a thoughtful gesture. Wait, how about you go all out too? Don't give me any time to think and stuff. Are you certain? Yeah, you already have been beating me for days now, and besides, it's different now. It'll just hurt a little bit more, Naruto finished. She thought about it. No giving him time to react, or to think. Just relying on instinct. Was she giving him too much time to think? Was she too lenient? Giving him a little too much time to think to the point of second-guessing himself. Perhaps she going a little too easy on him, not pushing him hard enough. To really get results, if they were present she would have to attack whilst he was unprepared. Along with her full speed. I understand what you're trying to convey, she answered. Allowing herself to be surprised would defeat the purpose. So she mentally prepared her next moves that she would use against him. Alright, just give me a moment too. She performed a jutsu, the body flicker for faster accelerated movement. She appeared right beside him, surprise clearly written on his face. She gave him no time or any slight act of mercy. Faster than when she sparred with him, she performed a roundhouse kick aimed for his torso. He caught it, whereas he wasn't able to do before. She continued to send a barrage of punches and kicks, as quickly as she could. His expression changed to a concentrated look, his eyes shining. His movements flowing flawlessly to one another instead of the sloppy and pitiful ones. She threw a punch, he grabbed it easily and attempted to grab it with his other hand. She broke free, but not before he failed to restrain her with his free hand. She jumped back, throwing blunted shuriken towards him. He pulled out one of his kunai to deflect them. Landing quickly, she blinked as the tools she threw was about to reach her target. At that moment, she felt something cold press against her neck. Orange and yellow filling her vision. Naruto had appeared right before her with his kunai in his hand. If this was a death match, he would have emerged victorious. Silence. Did I just win? As he dropped his arm to his side. It seems so, and your idea actually worked, she gave light praise, almost reluctantly. Cool, he reacted, which wasn't much. Perhaps he was modest when it came to achievements he performed himself. She had initially expected him to wail in victory, jumping around excitedly. It was tame, like when he was able to water walk, tree walk and other things. So how were able to appear before me? I thought your jumps were limited to those seals, she asked as she looked for anything solid that he had slipped on her. Yeah, there's one on you, he shrugged. Mito blinked several times, there was no kunai on her. When did he? It took a moment for her to remember that she was weakly grabbed beforehand. She inspected her wrist, finding a seal similar to one on his special kunai. He caught the sight. Oh cool, I could do that too. Can you take it off? Offering her wrist to him. He looked at it for a few moments. Yeah, he replied. I have no idea. He laughed, rubbing the nape of neck once again. Try it. The seal made her slightly uncomfortable. She could easily be found and he could appear, anywhere. Well, I'll try, he said earnestly. Placing a nice firm hold on her wrist as he placed a palm on her seal. Retreating it, only to find that it was still present. He repeated this dozens of times, only to fail each time. Never mind, as she retreated her wrist from his pleasant grasp. I honestly don't know, Mito, he replied, a apologetic smirk on his face. It's okay, I'll just take it off myself later on, she replied. It's getting late, perhaps we should go back now. Naruto carefully took off the towel around his waist and quickly dipped into the hot springs. It had been about a week now. Tomorrow was the day they were supposed to leave. He felt the hot moisture enter his lungs as he took calm breaths. The near scalding water of the hot springs calmed his muscles, a little sore from the training that he had done. He gave some greetings to the few other guys present in the hot springs, but didn't seem interested in conversing any further. Proceeding to a nearby corner, he merely decided to try and relax for a bit. It was for still felt restless, especially so for when he alone. Those weeks being stuck in the apartment did nothing to help that. He tried to talk to the nearest guy, but it seemed he was finished, quickly exiting the water. Great. No one to talk to. If he had to be honest with himself, he was slightly frustrated. He could feel the hot pressure building slowly over in his head since he had arrived here. Even with the return of Mito didn't help with that regard. The reasoning was that he was lost, completely so. He had no clear direction, he had to do something, but the largest problem was that he had no idea what it was or what to do. If he didn't have that looming feeling, he could probably ignore all that. Except it just wouldn't go away. He clearly had no identity, nothing quite familiar to work on. Just vagueness, cluttered and hidden by fog. God damn, did he hate things like that. Even he wasn't sure whether Naruto was his own name. That name and the gear that he apparently had was all he had to work with. There was Mount Myoboku, that no one had apparently ever been to. Then there was Konohagakure, which sparked nothing of familiarity in him. Perhaps he could reveal his insecurities to Mito and Emi, but he wasn't quite sure he wanted to burden them any more than he had to. After all, it was his problem to deal with. The training was a nice distraction, but it didn't necessarily give him a sense of satisfaction. Even if it was frustratingly hard, for some reason. Whenever he completed an exercise like the tree walking exercise, all he felt that he should have been able to do it. He didn't feel any sort of accomplishment through those seemingly tiny achievements. He grumbled in the water, bubbles flowing out. He looked at his surroundings. It wasn't grand, as it was a small place. Fairly bare when it came to the amount of costumers though. Naruto released a yawn and leaned back a bit, trying and failing to relax himself. Mito was situated somewhere on the other side of the wall. A small thought formed in his mind. She was obviously naked, and then he heard that humming tune she sung several times before. He was suddenly intrigued by this, knowing it was Mito on the other side. Emi was supposed to be there. He wasn't curious about the tune, however. Naruto paused, suddenly alert of his thought process. He looked around to see guys, most of them sat away from the wall. What the hell? Am I a pervert? No. Denying it. It wasn't his fault, not at all. Now he felt that slip once more, another nagging feeling. Yes, those perverse thoughts stemmed from someone else. Or was it completely natural to feel that way? Then there was Seal that was on her wrist. He could feel it calling, beckoning to him like a loyal dog. It seemed more like an angry guard dog though. She had said that was keyed to him and she couldn't take it off. Nor put on any counter seals to nullify the effects. At least, not without any unforeseen consequences. So he was entrusted to not take advantage of it. Naruto, I should let you know that you should consider my grandfather's words when you two met, hearing Mito's voice sound. He had initially thought it was just his imagination, but other things were said. He gulped audibly, completely forgotten that she was a sensory type, and would always feel his presence nearby. Sure, he guessed that was a good thing. Being disappointed was a sure tell sign that he was perverse. Wiping those thoughts away, at least Mito thought well of him, enough to think that he wasn't that kind of person. No accusations, that was a good sign. He recalled some of Emi's little input on her older sister. He was also explained by her sister that she was a little haughty. That much he knew at least. She always had this sense of superiority because she ate correctly, or spoke in such a civilized way. As long as the meaning came across, or the food entered his belly, everything was okay. Better than okay, it was perfection in his opinion. It didn't mean to be so pointlessly complicated. He didn't exactly voice his opinion as of yet, but it didn't matter all the much to him. Maybe it was who she was, he didn't mind that. Kind too, but a little bit condescending. It was nice to knock her down a pegs at times. Plus, her reactions were hilarious. She was being ordered to help him, that much he knew, at least partly. Not anymore if he knew now. He did his best to understand the reasoning to protect her village. His life was insignificant compared to the entire village. He was a potential danger to them. The world didn't revolve around him, nor could he change it alone. Another feeling welled up before it disappeared once more, but he had a feeling that it had to do with his earlier thoughts. Disregarding it, seeing as he had several of those already. He had already talked to Emmy about it, letting things come naturally and not force it. Hey Mito. It seemed a little odd to talk like this, he'd rather talk face to face. Yes. What might have happened if I were to have popped up anywhere else? Like in another village? He asked. She took a moment to answer. Other than Konohagakure, this is just conjecture on my part, to put it bluntly, you might have been killed. He flinched a little, he would have been defenseless, if his sparring matches were of any indication. Thanking whatever entity or event that had landed him near Uzushiogakure. He probably wouldn't have been given the same offer as the old man did. So why are the two villages so special? There are many clans that joined the different villages, not all of them are quite as forgiving as Uzumaki, although, that has caused some grief as well. She said rather emotionlessly, but went back to her original voice a moment later. The Senju would likely have done the same as Hashirama Senju, their clan leader, is quite a generous person. Huh, I should meet this guy, I have a feeling he's someone I would like, he replied. Along with others that are coming with us, we are staying at his compound, I have told you that before. Right, I wasn't really listening because you kept talking that time. He was met with silence for several long moments. And what do you mean by that? She said rather icily. Nothing bad I swear, I just like listening to you talk. She didn't reply to that. So why weren't you so worried? Naruto asked. Again, another long moments passed. He let out a sigh of relief when she began to talk again. We were friendly with the Senju clan, and by default with the Yamanaka clan. Their clan jutsu is especially useful for such a thing. So my grandfather and I were confident with someone like you. I imagine other villages wouldn't have taken such a chance. There was some muffled murmuring that he couldn't catch, but loud laughing was soon heard. It was Emmy's, if he could recall. Apparently catching up with her sister. Be quiet. Hearing Mito berating her little sister, but they didn't seem to talk anymore after that. He relaxed, wondering what was so funny to Emmy. Plenty of things were going happen now. Tomorrow, they would finally traverse to Konoha, along with several other shinobi of Uzushiogakure. Then, well, he wasn't sure so about those others things. Naruto. He heard the voice of Emmy sound from the other side of the barrier. Briefly, a vague impression of her also in a state of undress appeared. Damn it, he muttered under his breath before speaking up. What's up? We're going to go talk with our friends, bye. Alright. Not getting an answer. He decided to wait around the water, trying to ignore the seal he accidentally placed on Mito's wrist. Tomorrow morning they were supposed ready for days of travel. He had a dream when he slept that night. He was walking through wreckage of rusted steel and decayed wood. Making his way through worn and old buildings. He found himself standing on a fallen pillar overlooking destroyed wreckage. It was unrecognizable, some turned over buildings had fallen into a nearby river. The area might have once looked impressive at one point, if it wasn't obliterated. He remembered thinking that it was a very odd dream. Walking through the area, he was here for something though, what that might be was lost on him. He trudged on however, impatience coursing through him. From the surrounding decrepit buildings, many others joined in his search. Naruto, are you ready? He turned around to see Mito standing there by the doorway to his room, a small pack shouldered on her back. She probably used seals, just like him. She was likely oblivious to him knowing that he had figured that stuff out. I wasn't too hard, if he could take stuff out, he could put stuff in. Remembering the seal was a pretty nifty thing too. Yup, I'm all packed and roaring to go, he answered, flinging the pack onto his back. He also had such a fantastic idea, and couldn't wait to start it. Actually, right now was probably as good as it could get. Let me see. Alright, I don't see why though, he shrugged, giving her to pack just to see. Naruto. Her expression turned a little disbelieving as she searched a little around. Yeah, this is full of ramen. So, what's wrong with ramen? It's the greatest food in the land, he reasoned. She simply looked a little struck by his reasoning. You can't be so. Are you? Wow. Way to overreact, Mito. I'm not that much of a idiot. I put my clothes in here, as he pulled out a scroll that was hanging to his back. Her brow was furrowed cutely, as in disbelief or something. It's so I get my ramen really fast. He added. Mito's eyes widened a little, her mouth twitched a little, threatening to smile. Sometimes, Mito, you need to take a load off, you're too serious all the time, he smiled, undeterred by her glare. Here, she simply said. Emmy is supposed to be here soon. He got his pack full of ramen back, he put the scrolls full of items on the side or in the pockets. Right. He saw his coat, with the kanji of Mount Myoboku on the back. You know I found out where this is. Mount Myoboku. He nodded. Yeah, it's pretty far away though, a month full of traveling. You might be from there, she suggested. I don't think so. I read that people have never been on the top of it, he explained more of the descriptions of its surroundings. You might be the first, or that a village was already been situated on it, perhaps on the other side of the mountains. So I might be from a strange land. He shook his head, too many theories and not enough solid answers. There are plenty of contradictions that you are, or there must be some amazing coincidences, she stated. Like the shadow clone. Mito had explained its capabilities. It was solid, capable of somewhat free thought and able to retrieve information upon dispersing. It was unique among the variant of the clone. It sounded really cool, he wondered how much he could make. He shrugged, picking up that coat and placing it on himself. He next took the bag and wore it over his shoulder. That sense of dread continued to bore at him. It made him nervous. It had stopped now, it felt like it was at the pit of his stomach. The seal. It had stopped yesterday, and on that night he had a strange dream. Its details kept fading and reappearing at odd intervals. Nothing could be extracted from it, so he didn't bother telling Mito. He turned to face the door. Mito was still standing there. It fits you well. Thanks. She dug into her pockets. My grandfather wanted you to have this. She pulled out a metallic piece, a black band attached to it. The symbol of the Uzumaki was engraved on it. The same as the one Mito wore on her forehead too. You'll have to wear it, until we reach Konoha, not official until you decide to join. He took the offered headband, as her tone suggested there was no room for complaints. Taking a moment to inspect it, before tying it around his head. It felt right to have something around it. It was comfortable. A knock sounded at the door, that familiar annoying knocking of Emmy. Mito immediately went to go answer the door as he followed behind. He just purposely hung back a little for specific reasons. The door swung open, revealing Emmy. A sad frown when she entered. Ah, I'll be so sad to see you both go. You'll still be able to visit. Mito replied. But that would be while from now, and who knows how long your mission will last. You kept saying that it might be. Emmy had a sad frown on her face. The sense of goodbye was immediately in the air. It made him feel. Even if it does last that long, we're being rotated so I'll still be able to visit and stay here for a few months, Mito replied softly. I'll still miss you. Of course, I'll miss you too. Emmy looked ready to cry, her eyes watery. She stepped forward to engulf her in a soft sisterly hug. Naruto felt like he didn't belong in such a moment. Mito's expression had greatly softened. She looked peaceful, at ease. It was plain to see that she really loved her sister. They broke apart, taking a moment to collect themselves as he stood there a little awkwardly. Eventually, however, he was noticed by Emmy herself. Immediately, He too was given a surprising hug. Hesitantly, he returned the it. It was nice, he could only think. Watch her for me, okay? She whispered quietly. If anything, she's the one looking after me. She was probably smiling, but his comment was ignored. It'll make me feel better, if you promise. What else was he supposed to say? He wasn't going to deny her, the thought never crossed him. I promise. It was strange how he felt when he said that. Thank you. As she tore herself away. Mito was looking curiously with that glint in her eye. She was holding the door open. It's time to go now. Got it? As he stepped towards the door. Another too many goodbyes were made with Emmy as they left the site of Mito's apartment. He could only follow her absent-mindedly through the village. It seemed like a simple request, to watch over Mito. Although he felt very strongly about it. He didn't want to disappoint Emmy, who was a good friend. Naruto had been on some self-searching, he couldn't help it. He had contemplated on how he was originally. Was he some sliver of his personality? Or was he his own unique person? Perhaps Naruto was inside somewhere, or just a piece of him. He blinked, realizing that they had stopped. Their walk had been a while now. Mito was standing over a nearby bench. So, where is everyone? He asked, looking around where the apparent meeting point was, which was a gate side, going towards Konoha and its residing country. There was no one around, at least, no one that looked like shinobi with packs like himself and Mito. He turned to the woman, looking a little flustered for some reason. They're late, she seemed to concentrate for several moments. Aren't we on time? He asked. Yes, we are. So we didn't have to rush at all? He asked, and realized something odd about Mito. That's pretty funny. She didn't seem to want to answer his question. I know who they are, and it seems that they are not even close to being ready, or near here. He looked around. A guard was stationed at the entrance. Some other civilians were walking around the sidewalk going about their day. He was still standing up on the other side of the bench where Mito was sitting. He wondered if they had enough time to. So, Mito looked expectantly at him. Want to go get some ramen? Are you serious? Yeah, he answered. Didn't we have ramen yesterday? He nodded. Well, yeah, but that was yesterday. She blinked several times, a blank look. I'd rather not. We'll wait here until the others arrive. Besides, we ate a few hours ago. She sat down on a nearby bench. Ah, come on. You said it might be a while. You got your cool stalker thing so you know where they are, he reasoned. She looked aghast at him. Did you just call my sensory ability, the nerve? She huffed and looked away. Her cheeks flushed in anger. Oh, did I? He scratched his head. I mean, it's kind of true, is it? That's how you found me last time. Just be silent, she said harshly, ending the conversation. I guess there's no ramen then. He sat down dejectedly, waiting in silence. Long minutes passed and he was tempted to risk asking her again. He decided not to, and started to pull out an instant ramen packet from out of his bag. Popping the cup open and alerting Mito. Are you really going to eat that here? She questioned, a somewhat annoyed look lingered from his earlier suggestion. Sure, why not? Ramen is ramen. Although I would like to have some hot water with it and see to Emmy too. We saw her 30 minutes ago. He shrugged. That was some slightly heavy stuff. I'd like more normal moments with her. You know, I obviously don't have a ton of memories to remember people by, so I would like to have more of those precious little times, you know. But, don't you think those heavy occasions are more significant? She replied, her expression of interest and curiosity again. Of course, but sometimes I want more, happier times, I guess. Even if it doesn't really seem much, you know. With anyone that would be my friend, like you. He looked down to take a good bite out of the block of instant ramen. It tasted okay, but the hot water and spices definitely made the dish. If we hurry, would you teleport us back here? She asked suddenly. He reacted instantly. Hell yeah, of course, I already have a seal placed at the ramen stand. He placed a seal on the bench, The one that was at the ramen stand only had the handle of one the kunai hidden under the seat. Well, before he replaced it with just the seal. She laughed pleasantly. Of course you would. He smiled, placing a hand on her forearm. He made sure that there was no one on the seat before he appeared before on the seat on the ramen stand. There was no one else around. Emmy was standing behind the counter preparing some ramen. What's up again, Emmy? She flinched from the sudden noise, turning around to lock eyes. Naruto. Mito. What are you two doing here? Aren't you both supposed to leave? Yup. Everyone's late though, so we came by to have a snack, Naruto answered. Although I don't, it would be a snack for you, Emmy replied. He nodded happily in agreement. She sighed a moment later. You made me get all emotional for nothing then. Why are you emotional now? She shook her head. Great. Come have some ramen then. It's been a while since we all had some ramen together, hasn't it? She smiled, but otherwise nodded and quickly prepared their preferred dishes. He kept having odd dreams when they stopped traveling and rested for the night. He remembered it fairly clearly, the second dream that he had. There always a lack of information of his part, something that he was supposed to know but didn't. He was looking for something. He kept sending someone somewhere. A place that was pretty far from the wreckage of the large village. There was a lot of searching, picking up wooden frames and clearing out the vegetation. There were many places that had been completely buried underneath and he couldn't resort to utter destruction to clear it. Did he have jutsu that could do that? Where was he? The only answer was that this was his mother's birthplace. Hey man, are you alright? He was shot out of his contemplation, turning over to see a guy named Nori waving his hand in front of his face. He always seemed nervous for some reason. Yeah, I'm alright, shaking his head from his thoughts. He was sprinting along with the other Uzumaki clan members, a team of 10 shinobi, not including himself. Mito was up ahead, leading the other people and generally being a leader of the group. Oh good, I thought you were brain dead for a moment there because you had a blank expression, he laughed quietly. That was another thing too, he was filled with terrible jokes. He probably thought they were pretty funny too. Naruto forced a chuckle, that was pretty bad. Oh, sorry. He seemed like a good person though. A short guy with short white hair, his mother was married into the clan. He was 17 years old. Don't worry about it, do you know how far we have to go now? Naruto asked. After the end of the day, 2 more days after that. He replied quickly. Sweet. He answered. The first day could only be described as boring. The majority was spent on a boat to cross the channel between the land of fire and land of whirlpools. Tomorrow, they were supposed to meet up with some members of the Senju clan at the halfway point for an escort. So, how do you know Mito? I mean, I've seen you talk to her a lot. Oh yeah, I fell from the sky once, he started. I think you need to make a really good first impression on her. Mito once said that she might have been slightly put off if they had met normally. It wasn't the entire truth though, there was something else she had refused to say, he didn't know what though. He liked to think that they would still be good friends, no, he believed in that. She probably thought so too. Oh, are you usually nervous around new people? Naruto asked. What makes you think that? Nori replied in his fast speech. Oh, I don't know, did you not make a good first impression on Mito? Oh no, he looked away. I am pretty nervous when it comes to new people, I don't know why though. Well, it's obvious. Naruto exclaimed. What's that? Nori asked. Just keep meeting new people to get over that, fear. Anxiety of yours. Naruto nodded sagely. I mean, we're going somewhere new, right? That's a great chance. Nori smirked, nodding furiously. Naruto decided to talk with the other Uzumaki, as he had done since he had first met them. It was a pretty nice experience to talk with other people, a pretty, excitable red-headed woman. There was also an older guy, who always seemed to be laughing despite how quiet he actually was. There was another kunoichi, who liked to talk louder than Naruto himself. All amongst other unique people, 3 of whom seemed a bit normal compared to the others. One of which was Mito. Naruto wanted to get to know them, seeing as they might be living under the same house for a while. Now he lying under the small tent he was given, waiting for sleep to catch up with him. After the first shift, it was going to be his turn to watch over the camp with Mito. The small tent was comfortable. It was comfortable, but unwelcomed. It was a little lonely, despite that he could already hear snoring at the moment. He chuckled, rolling over to his side. Being alone, he hated the thought. He was expecting another dream tonight, maybe it would help his memories. It wasn't a dream. No, it was just emotion that he felt. Were they his? They didn't feel like it. It felt detached, but how did he feel them? It felt like ages before he recognized that they were actually his. Only experiencing them as a memory, he thought. It felt distant, but they were still very present and alive. Was he experiencing it deep within his heart? Like it was locked behind a door that he couldn't open? Was he like the old Naruto? One that still had his former memories? Or was he completely different? No, he had some ideals that he believed in, only he didn't remember how he learned them. Perhaps there was still his shadow being casted around him, not yet him but not quite his own person. There was a multitude of emotions in them: love, fear, loss. At times, he just felt nothing. Only for other things to appear after that: determination, relief, hope. The feeling of hope stood out to him, it was admirable. Naruto, Naruto, he heard soothing exhausted voice. He blinked awake. His heart felt heavy and his eyes mysteriously wet. Yeah, he answered. His leg was being shook, only stopping when he replied. It's our turn. He heard Mito yawn tiredly. All right, replying drowsily. He wiped off the apparent tears and quickly put on his jacket, along with the cloak that he had. The air already felt chilly from inside the tent, so he could only assume that it would colder outside. He was right, as soon as he stepped out. It was a surprising, considering the heat a week ago. It was really dark outside. The source of light was from a small flame some paces away from the general camp area. The moon gave no source of light, covered by the clouds overhead. He was already slightly awake, instead of the mess he usually was at other times. His dream had something to do with that. Even then, he stumbled to the lowly lit area where Mito was. There was some stumps around, from earlier when they were all feasting around the fire pit. He was seen being approached by her, a barely seen smile on her face. He had only seen it because of the light from the fire. She was tired, some bags under her eyes, something that he never seen before as she was always up before him. Here, she mumbled, she offered a cup of water. Thanks, taking a swift drink from it, it was cool. He sat down a few feet from her taking in the warmth of the fire. Her hair was hastily tied up, some strands in front of her face. He took a look around the camp, but it was dark and he couldn't really see much. There were tents around with the other people he was traveling with. He was told that there was a seal placed around the camp, in a 100-meter radius. The people that were up, usually two, were a precaution if someone quickly slipped by. Mito had the key for it, and would it alert her if someone came through, it could be transferred around. She also had her ability on top of that, so he assumed that it an easy job. I don't really like waking up this early, or being interrupted, Mito said, yawning once again. I enjoy my sleep. I think I like my sleeping more, he replied, reasoning that he was always up a little later than her. There was still this tiny smile that she continued to wear, it was contradicting her earlier statement. That sat in comfortable silence for a long time, slowly waking from their slumber. In that time, he could only think about how he was. Those emotions that he felt were fairly powerful. What were the things that he experienced? What did he lose? Hey Mito. Yes. What if I do remember who I am? He asked. Would I be the same person that I am now? She took several long moments to answers. I think so, or at the least, close to who you are now. She seemed to believe her words. Why is that? What makes you think that? He asked curiously. Mito hesitated for a long time. Other than the fire, the only other movement that he saw was her toes moving. Otherwise, she seemed completely impassive. I just do. From what he could tell, she believed that. I really like everyone else so far. They're lively, she replied. Not really in a negative though. I went on missions with the other clans at Uzushio. There's some contrast of personalities between the Uzumaki and the others. Really? Which one do you like to team up with then? He asked. I suppose I prefer my own clansmen. I would think that you would enjoy it a bit more with the others, Naruto asked. The others are more serious, glum, too predictable, compared to the Uzumaki. Predictable, huh? I guess that makes it less interesting then. She cocked her head to the side when he said that. You have to remember that we only recently became allies. We are certainly friendly with one another, except there is no trust. So it's understandable that we're wary of one another until those ties grow stronger. There's tension that might disappear over the years. My grandfather is working to build those bridges. Well, it'll only work if everyone starts to trust each other. He stretched, the drowsiness he carried earlier going away. Mito's perpetual smile seemed to have gone away too, replaced with a more thoughtful expression. There wasn't much to do at a time like this. Other than sit around the fire and eat some leftover food. Talk a little, if Mito was up for it. You seem to be connecting well with everyone, she commented. That surprised him, it wasn't even something he noticed. That's peculiar, going strangely quiet. Well, you said they were, rowdy or something like that, right? Maybe they're the ones that are good at that, he replied. Mito stared at him through the dimly lit fire, which crackled occasionally. She gave a noncommittal shrug, looking back at the fire. She was thinking, but he was no mind reader. He wondered if women were always so strange. He could see many things, there was others for sure, hidden beneath and waiting for the right trigger to start it. He felt some mixed feelings about it, an indifference, fear and anticipation. Naruto could only wonder about how and why he felt those things, his inconsistent and hesitant outlook about recovering his memories. As well as other subjects, or ideas, constantly molding its shape. The end without the journey. Again, he saw many things that he couldn't exactly discern, what might have been said in its surroundings. A multitude of different scenarios, mostly statics of background and people. The people in his dreams would say nothing, but there was a small sense of familiarity for a few of them. There was plenty of things he remembered, all that came rushing forward, bursting through like water through a dam. His eyes split open, breathing deeply. Naruto was on fire, stomach, legs and torso, everywhere was hot. It wasn't the near unbearable heat that summer gave, this was almost painful. Tearing the blanket off, he rolled himself in an attempt to get outside to reach cool air. In the blinding darkness, he didn't anticipate the sudden sensation of free fall for one split second. He felt the sting of the fall, but the elation he felt from the cold hard floor soothed it immediately. He laid there for an undetermined amount of time. Feeling fully awake, Naruto noticed the oddity of falling. He remembered falling asleep in his tiny tent in his sleeping bag this early morning. Something was wrong. Nervousness crept upon him, heightened only by the black. He sat up, the smallest hint of light being shown through a crack of a door in a lonely corner. It was his only solace in a land of nothing, a small and solitary beacon. He stood up and slowly inched forward, hoping that he didn't knock into anything. He felt the hairs on his neck stand, trying to ignore the feeling the walls closing in on him. A deep breathing that wasn't his own was heard in the room. Loathing the dark, he debated on just sprinting out. Something lightly grazed the front of his foot, his heart jumped in terror as he yanked it away. Only to realize from the little light that it was just a piece of cloth. Fuck. Where the fuck am I? More to himself than anyone else. The second time he awoke to find himself no idea where he was. It made him anxious. Thankfully, he made it out of the room without incident. The door slid soundlessly behind him, nothing but the admittedly creepy creaks of the house was heard. He found himself outside, The house had surrounded a rectangular yard. The light came from a dimly lit lamp that hung from a tree overlooking a calm pond. He walked closer to the lantern, his ears ringing from the silence. Clouds broke in a pale reflection of the full moon shone. He pondered about his whereabouts as he peered at the bright moon. Despite the illumination that the moon provided, it greatly disturbed him, as it only revealed shadows. He was not confident in his ability to defend himself. How was he supposed to act natural if he was panicking? Perhaps that was something he should have brought to Mito. He took a shaky breath. What could he do? Then he felt it, that familiar little tug of a teleport seal. There were two, somewhere close nearby. A whisper from the air. A barely audible creak sounded behind him. His instincts kicked in, not the desire to fight but flight, and he disappeared. They had met their Senju escort, a full group of 6 for their 10. Pleasantries had been exchanged, an eager welcome for those that knew one another. She wasn't too familiar with much of the other clans. Names of course, but not to the extent of others in her group. With the exception of Naruto, who didn't know anyone but didn't hesitate to introduce himself. He obviously got swimmingly well with the others. So Mito, brought out from her thoughts, an acquaintance of hers had treaded up beside. Is there something you need? So, leading this so-called quest? An assignment, yes, she replied. Feeling her shoulders tense, they were never on such friendly terms, disagreements always seemed to spark. He shrugged. The obvious choice, a sort of prodigy of sealing arts. Sighing Mito, I didn't think you were exhausted, or was it because of the prodigy bit? Sealing just interested me, she didn't quite know what else to say. Ah, just that, others obviously tried very hard, plenty never really had the talent to begin with. A bit disheartening when you say it just interested you, despite never actually aiding with teaching and. He ranted on as she frowned. Sealing apparently did come slightly more simple than others. Some formulas just appeared incredibly straightforward. Others didn't seem to share the same level of intuition as her. She also tried other non-conventional ways of applying those methods, thus, her strength of 100 seal was created. She felt her lips purse as he waited for her reply. It obvious that he was trying to antagonize her, sour, and his earlier comments would suggest he felt more deserving to lead. She finally spoke after he went quiet. There's nothing else to say, we are only here to create a specific type of seal. There is not much to gain here, no glory, just theorizing and brainstorming for an unspecified amount of time. She refused to say any more, ignoring anything he may have said. She really had no interest in leading her to take up the mantle of clan lead. HMPH, he raised his head and walked forward, breaking off their conversation. She felt herself relax slightly. She was never comfortable enough around people to be casual with. The few friends she had taken some time to become accustomed with. She found it difficult to connect with people, to be sentimental with them. She tried to find a rationale as to why. It might have come from a multitude of reasons. A commotion was heard, the familiar laughter from Naruto. He was with several people, all of whom were adding their own chuckles. One kunoichi was touching his arms playfully. She observed at how he interacted with the others. Practically effortlessly, she would describe. If she was a prodigy at sealing, then he was exceptional at connecting with others. She then regarded the kunoichi that was frequently touching his arm. The slight tinge of a blush, Mito pondered if she was flirting with him. She wondered at how she would go about that. Subtle seemed the best way to go about it. Except Naruto wasn't so perceptive with those hints. There wasn't much that she could do about it, she had no claim on Naruto. She felt that hesitancy and fear when approaching someone she liked. She didn't want to look too much into things about their interactions. Her opinion of him continuously changed. She moved forward, not wanting to look if Naruto noticed or returned her flirting. She felt some hours pass by, still nearly an entire day to reach Konoha. A light mood descended upon the group, several stayed vigilant to keep watch. She included herself in that list, as she was one of 2 sensory ninja. So she had an important task. It seemed that would go smoothly, but her hopes suddenly died out when she felt more than 3 dozen signatures. It was very unfortunate. A full stop had been issued and some whispers were heard before silence hung onto the atmosphere. As she waited, she got a hold of her surroundings. They had taken a shortcut, so there was only a small game trail, small trees and thick bushes with large trees that surrounded them. The Senju sensory type shinobi came trotting down to her. An anxious expression which she also shared. Hostiles? She asked. It's very likely. His eyes began to focus over to the direction of the fast approaching group. I count 36. Confirmation. She counted quickly and carefully. They were moving fast and were barely a minute away. A sure count would make a difference. So there would be no surprises. That's correct. A 6-man team is slightly further away. A backup. He agreed as his team captain had appeared, relaying the information to everyone. She joined in too, and quickly dispatched groups into certain formations. There wasn't much time to convey much orders. She gave specific directions for several of her SEAL personnel, and everyone moved into place. Laying in wait to see if they would provoke an attack. She saw Naruto, albeit briefly, with a fellow named Nori before she lost sight of him. A line had been formed, looking forward where they would appear from. Mito couldn't really describe herself anything less than nervous. Any fatalities would rest on her, they would stay with her. She tried to calm her nerves as best she could, to clear her head and try to end her opponents as fast as possible. No doubt it would be chaos with a between groups this large. It didn't help that they were fighting in bulk. She sensed them, so very close. No any sort of halting or redirection that would signal a peaceful resolution. A few hasty traps were quickly set, paper bombs set against the trunks of trees. She shouted orders and activated one of the numerous seals on queese that protected her thighs. She kneeled down and placed the scroll on the ground with her hands placed on the parchment, ready to activate. Her acute senses heard the bustling leaves and branches being swept aside. Hints of movement and sights of color in the thick evergreen and brown. The patters of a legion of feet being struck as they approached. Somewhere in the crowd, the metallic sounds of blades being pulled from their sheaths. A short tense moment of the dreadful hopefulness that they would survive. A blaring silence was heard before she heard an explosion rock through the air, triggering a chain of resounding booms. She saw the numerous ninja tools being thrown and heard them being repelled. She felt several chakra rays in unison from the opposing shinobi. A large torrent of water came rushing forward, cascading in a destructive force that flattened small trees, causing pieces of debris to ride the current. Now, she shouted. A shimmering veil of white sprung up from the scroll, connecting each scroll across their own line. The pressurized water slammed against the shield and continued to raise higher than her own height. She could only muse that there were better alternatives to the shield, but with such a low prep time it was a quick and dirty solution. Her thoughts were cut short when the water suddenly disappeared from view. Someone had done a Earth-style technique that swallowed the water, creating a layer of mud. By then the other shinobi had nearly reached them, some attempting to reach around the shield. Release, she ordered. The wall faltered, breaking away from loss of power from its sources. Several of her comrades had prepared several jutsu to utilize. A small wave of fire flashed ahead, several caught aflame. She heard the numerous ninja tools cutting through the air. The crumbling of the ground as earth-style jutsu rose from the ground to stop them. The loud screeching of steel catching on steel. Trying to remain perceptive of her surroundings, she summoned another scroll when she spotted 3 running for her. With no time to utilize it, she had no choice but to discard it. She quickly made several hand signs and placed her hands on the ground just as they reached her. One of them caught her trap, crashing into the mud, paralyzed for however long until he disrupted it. She threw several shuriken at her down target, but were easily deflected by his fellow shinobi. The 2 engaged her, but she was given no space to retaliate and only defend against their strikes. She desperately held off against them for several more prolonged moments until one of her teammates engaged one of them. leaving a skilled Kenjutsu user for her to deal with. She reciprocated her attacker's assault, landing a few glancing blows as they traded. He had a more significant reach than her, his strikes like lightning as she deflected his slashes. Being pushed back once more is the nagging feeling of an enemy behind her. She risked a split second to gather her surroundings as to not be caught unaware from any outside sources. It had a cost. An unanticipated lower kick from her opponent made her trip, causing a painful fall into smoldering pile of embers that slipped between the cracks of her armor. Quickly disregarding the minor pain to focus on the attempt on her life. She saw his blade already starting to descend down at her. She was given a split second to react as she threw a handful of ash at his face. His aim was slightly off course as it bounced off her armor and unbalanced him. She seized the opportunity before he had the chance to recover. She quickly got to her knees. Still firmly holding a kunai, she quickly planted the small blade into his side. She felt the blade sink in and her hands becoming hot. Before anything else could be done, she felt several stinging painful sensations running along her left arm. She was left gasping for breath and finding herself sailing through the air for several meters before she landed on her feet. Looking for any signs of danger, she saw a shinobi near where she fell her opponent. Still alive and clutching where the kunai was still embedded. It felt like ages had passed since the skirmish had started, but she knew more than that. In reality, it was more likely only a couple of minutes had progressed, perhaps less. The battle had spread further apart in the low amount of time. She checked her injuries, finding that her side was drenched with water, the armor crushed and slightly crumbling from a water-style jutsu. Her arm had 3 shuriken planted in her skin, crimson leaking out from her wounds. Minor injuries, so she could still fight. Her new challenger took a step. The uproar of battle blaring into her ears suddenly mimicked the sound of a graveyard, an eerie silence. She felt a shiver run up the length of her spine as she swallowed nervously. The only sound was her own quick shallow breaths, her heart beating so fast it felt it was going to burst. Her muscles non-compliant as she attempted to step forward. Her feeling of fright intensified before she quelled it. Her first thought was a genjutsu, except as a sensory type she was practically immune. The sense of uneasiness and fear rose as she identified the source of her worry. She felt the abrupt influx of an insurmountable source of chakra, raising so rapidly and so immensely that small stones and the earth itself rose several feet in the air. It took her a moment to comprehend that everyone else was just as awestruck as she was. She gathered herself along with everyone else to prepare for oncoming tailed beast-sized chakra, albeit feeling the comparison was insufficient. Confusion ran amok as both battalions thought the other possessed it. Mito felt the source flood the landscape of the battle. Flashes of gold and yellow and black filled her vision. The shinobi standing across from her was engaged, a short one-sided exchange was shared. Before the glowing figure forcibly crashed him into the dirt, he struggled for a moment before a hand was placed over his chest, dark unusual markings snaked its way throughout his body and the movement stopped. Other scuffles were heard, several of her own comrades engaging the user before having their own movements sealed. The foreign sources flickered in some places, her sight allowing her to see a few bursts of smoke only to be quickly replaced. She closely inspected one closest to her. His glowing golden hair flowing wildly, wisps of orange that imitated flames. His form bright and luminescent, flickering between red and yellow. Seeing the kanji written behind made her gasp. The revelation that it was Naruto shocked her. His chakra had changed dramatically, both familiar and somehow foreboding mixed together. Naruto stood victoriously over his opponent, as well as many numerous solid clones. They each stood guard near their own prisoner. Their own allies that he subdued, however, he just sat upon their backs. She didn't know how to react, whether to speak or to merely observe. Shock still an immediate feeling. A clone, or the real one appeared from out of thin air. His gaze capturing the lying form of the shinobi that she had stabbed in the side. He clutched at his side weakly, frail and pale with blood loss. He approached swiftly, coming to his side. "Don't worry, you're okay," Naruto whispered softly. Barely audible from her distance. Gently, he removed the kunai, causing a painful groan and quickly placed a palm over his wound. There, all better, right? As he removed it a moment later. It was most definitely bizarre that there was no wound present. His vitality seemed to have been restored slightly. Dumbfounded at such an ability. Quote. Thank you. He just nodded as he placed a hand over him. Sorry, just a precaution. As the odd black ceiling pattern moved across the shinobi's torso, he peered around briefly, over the muddy, destroyed battlefield. Embers and charred trees with several bodies littering. Plenty were obviously injured, but alive. Several were questionable, yet when he approached them a moment later suddenly filled with life. Their brinks of death being halted. Mito felt the halt of the 6 chakra signatures that were their backup, intercepted by some of his shadow's clones. She noticed one of the clones looking curiously at her, golden odd-shaped pupils examining her. In a rather inopportune manner, he gave a brisk exaggerated salute and disappeared. She didn't know how to react from such a light-hearted gesture amidst such anarchic conditions. Incredibly inappropriate, yet, somehow reassuring. Taking notice that his entire presence disappeared as did nearly every unfamiliar source. It took her a minute to get over her shock to realize that they had relocated nearly 10 minutes away. Mito checked up on the situation with her fellow shinobi. Those who had fallen were fine, exhausted and disbelieving. She was in a similar state as well. Naruto was still all with the others who had attacked. Curiosity bit at her when they were all freely moving around and the many clones that Naruto had created disappeared. Leaving him alone, with everyone still recovering, she left someone in charge and went ahead to find the blonde. 4 others came with her, trailing closely. It was only after a few minutes after that she stopped. The adrenaline that had raced through minutes before had faltered. She felt the aches in her side and the shuriken still embedded in her arm. She grimaced at how she had forgotten about it. It hadn't bled much thankfully as she hadn't removed it yet. She washed in her hands in a nearby stream, the dirt and grime and blood being cleansed. When was finished she grabbed one and winced when she pulled it out. She carefully removed the rest. The sharp stabbing pains her arms were a nuisance. She quelled the bleeding by tying a cloth tightly around her wounds. The others with her were silent, tending to their own flesh wounds. Finished, she concentrated on where Naruto had gone, only to find that the large group had gone further away. His chakra was unmoving, still in the same location. What's happening? Why were they leaving? Did he let them go? Are you all right, Mito? A voice sounded from behind. She flinched, her heart jumping in fright before realizing it was Naruto. There was a hint of smile before it disappeared. Sorry, you stopped for some reason so I came to check if you were okay. He was still shimmering gold, occasionally faltering before appearing again and that process continued. The others behind him eyed him with fascination, curiosity and hesitancy. Naruto gave them a smile and a friendly wave before returning to face her. I'm fine, she replied after a second. How did you know I stopped? I'm a sensory type too, under some unique circumstances, shrugging and gestured towards the wounds on her arm. I hope that's the only thing you're woozy from. Inspecting the fabric on her arm, she saw it was drenched in crimson. Her arm felt unusable and painful and every breath she took caused a sharp pain in her ribs. I just need some attention and I'll be fine. Want me to help you? I'll be fine, she replied as honestly as she could. Tightening the cloth around her arm. She looked into his eyes by then, a total change. His pupils were unnatural, a sort of cross, a sharp vertical pointed with a horizontal soft curve. Animalistic pupils she had thought. Instead of the deep blue she knew, it was a pure orange. She felt her mind popping up with questions, a never-ending stream. She decided not to go with direct approach, but you always had to start with something. What happened? Why did you save them all? She asked. Did you let them go? He crossed his arms, taking some deep breaths. He was silent for a long time. He sighed audibly. Tired of it, you know. She didn't. His words were soft yet firm. His body language was relaxed. But yeah, I let them go, he answered. That honestly confused her, at least as to why he let them go. Why? For what reason? They were the ones whom antagonized the attack. They should be dealt with the consequences. I nearly lost some of my people. She felt some anger boil over. His lax demeanor was also a bit bothering. He stood unmoving, as he replied softly, almost condescendingly. I stopped it though. I guess you can say that the honor of what I wanted to do with them was mine alone. I'm not governed either, despite the headband might display. All that doesn't matter though, the only thing that does is that no one had died. I would very much like to avoid that type of thing. She blinked at this. Quote. An impossible wish, yeah, but you still gotta try, right? There was solid conviction in his voice. A compassion for others rang clear. If you're worried about repercussions, I'm sure Hashirama wouldn't mind at all, and well, the guys I let go were just glad they were alive. They were desperate. Village less, you know. And people thought I jumped to conclusions too often. There was certain confidence about him. How he acted and responded differed from the Naruto she knew. Someone who easily held aspirations and hopes. You're different. He raised a brow. Caught on, huh? So, all memories returned? She asked. Yeah, I definitely am, he replied. I also, obviously remember practically everything that had happened since appearing here. I gotta say, it was pretty weird, a whole lot of mix of things that were left in that partially filled shell of me. I'm also not entirely sure about several things. What do you mean? You're not really making any sense. Yeah, but what I'm doing is potentially incredibly dangerous that I don't really know the ramifications of. He rubbed his brows. It gives me such a big fucking headache. I'm still in the middle of figuring it out. How I ended up here is a pretty shitty deal. His penchant for swearing was still prevalent, it seemed. She ignored it. Can you explain? I don't think so. It's all just theory anyway. It wasn't done just by myself either. I do like theory, and you're definitely keeping it up with all this intrigue, she replied. He laughed then. Well, honestly, it's practically impossible on where to start. It'll take too long. Knowing you though, you're pedantic. He bore a small smirk, wiping his upper lip, but she could only raise her eyebrows. He had said it before, except with a little more grace this time. He turned to look, his eyes still that dark orange. The exception that there was no vertical slits anymore, just the horizontal one. How did you even do that? She asked incredulously. There was far too many details and explanations she wanted to ask. Healing them, I mean, you saved their lives. Really jumping from one topic to the other, aren't you? She had the decency to blush in embarrassment, but he continued. He shrugged and continued on. I take a part of them, and replace whatever was lost. It's a yang nature jutsu. I can't return people from the dead. They must still have the vitality for it. Their own physical chakra must still be prominent. There must always be a balance between the two, although one can go without the other for a time. I mostly extend their time, but I guess it can be called healing, for the most part. The guys I helped shouldn't have any problems. He stretched his arms behind his back and front, smoothing his black and orange jacket. Huh, this jacket is a bit tight. I only worn it for a bit of nostalgia when I came here. Rambling seemed to be a common experience for him, or perhaps it was because he just regained his memories. Openly contemplating the majority of the time while she took in the information. She noticed something in his quietness, however. His breathing was deep and perpetual, not calm at all. For nostalgia's sake, she asked. He took off the jacket, inspecting in his arms. Mud was apparent on the grimy jacket. There was worn seams and slash that torn the fabric that also reached his skin, but there was no gash that showed it. Yeah, well, there's a bunch reasons. A memory of my old master Jiraiya, a little keepsake for memories. A promise to be kept, a reminder of why I'm here. He was quiet for a bit as he turned over the jacket and circled the Uzumaki symbol. She noticed that they had walked away from the group that had came with her. She could still see them in the distance, but they couldn't hear. To answer something though, I am an Uzumaki. Let's keep at that. Rather significant news. You are. And what do you mean by that? His hands were entwined around the jacket, and seemed to emit such an intense heat for several moments. Instantaneously, the clothing turned to soot and ash and flew into the air. The smell of the fabric hung in the air for several seconds. Losing my memory helped, I suppose. I don't need trinkets to help me remember. A step forward, no matter how small, is pretty significant. Although I wouldn't mind reading my favorite book again, guess I'll just have to wait a bit. Now she felt like he wasn't just talking to himself, and she being deliberately ignored. Finally he turned to her. Don't you agree, Mito? Sure. I'm slow, but I know I'll never move backwards. He looked at her then, a gaze more significantly more soul-reaching. His eyes had returned to his original cerulean. There was changes to him that she couldn't really identify. So Mito, the difficult and slower method to the goal, or the uncomplicated and quick process? Whatever goal that might be. She blinked several times at the odd and random question. He waited expectantly for her answer, feeling like her answer was important. Yet, her opinion had already solidified the moment he asked. The uncomplicated path, it's the natural one. It definitely is. He looked away and crossed his arms. He showed no indication whether he was happy with her response, or disappointed. I have my own opinions, of course. He didn't seem to be inclined to share it. A small smirk displayed he knew of this, and he began to talk once more. Your search for intrigue is pretty much over, at least towards me. It's a bit of game for you right now, and there's really nothing wrong with that. You're still a kind and helping person, a sort of bonus thing for you, I guess. But honestly, what I have to do goes beyond you and myself. What a anticlimactic end, was the first thing that came to mind. She could only stare blankly at his declaration. Okay, was the only thing she could say. However, she still felt a great disappointment. He had another strange look. Trust me, it's probably for the best. This sounds like a goodbye. Well, that's because it is, saying it so very casually, in a tone that would match a friendly hello or small talk. She guessed she preferred it that way. Nothing needed to be so dramatic at all times. Even then she was a bit surprised. Really? Yeah, it was really great meeting you, or anything that might have happened since then, he replied softly, breathless. His chest noticeably puffing, as if with emotion. She was saddened by this announcement. There were a few points in head that she couldn't bring herself to initiate. It felt silly to do such a thing. It was difficult for her to be personally sentimental. There wasn't much that she could ask. Is it a permanent thing? Even then, her words felt awkward and uncharacteristic. He raised his brow. The feeling that her thoughts were not just her own became apparent. An exaggeration, she thought, but the Yamanaka were not far off. He clasped his hands and placed it over his neck, his elbows sticking into the ear. Bearing a smile with his casual gesture. Well, maybe, I don't know yet. It made her wonder if he was just some lone vagabond, yet, he confirmed he was Uzumaki. He was deliberately choosing to reveal little of himself. A solid conclusion brought closure. Leaving it in air always left wonders. My amnesia came out of nowhere, but I guess it's alright since nothing got too complicated. He was visibly relieved. Yet, she noticed the steady decline in his chakra. Well, before I forget, I might as well take that seal off your wrist. He stepped forward, his hand taking her forearm where her wounds were. It made her flinch from the contact. He whispered a sorry. That's plenty of blood, let me help with that, alright? Okay. His touches were tender, and she recalled that it was probably the only form of contact they had that did not involve sparring. The numbing and the burning in her tenderness seemed to dissipate after a moment. Her wounds felt like cool water had been poured over it. She saw the results after wiping the crimson away. Her skin was clear, no hints that she had been hit. She felt a sort warmth as she was being healed. Once again, his chakra emitted such radiance. There was a clear difference as to when he shone, or even the day before. It seemed more mature. She had to ask but was forgotten once he moved up to her shoulder. Tensing, She felt an unknown air of expectancy hanging in the air between them. Nervousness crept upon her as he stopped and took a hold of her hand. Remembering that he was supposed to release the seal on her arm, she pulled up her sleeves. What is it called anyway? She breathed out. The Flying Thunder God. Grand, she thought, before looking up to find he was staring directly at her. She felt herself biting her lip. His blue eyes widened, lip trembling. Oh, fuck me, he breathed out. The unexpected and scandalous words make her step back. She felt heat traveling up her neck. Naruto fell to the ground with a grunt, kneeling, his hands fly to temples as if in pain. Strained gasps escaping from him. Is something the matter? She asked, feeling incredibly foolish after apparently misjudging the direction of his words. His eyes are closed tightly and she felt a noticeable drop in his chakra. Fuck, he said in disbelief, shaking his head repeatedly. Hold on, some really odd stuff is going on with me, we don't really understand. Was she seemingly included? He shook as he placed his trembling hands weakly on the grass. I hope this is only temporary, otherwise. Physical connection, huh? Okay. There's always the desperate plan. He stared up at her with a faraway look before finally focusing on her. Mito, might help. Got 6 months or something stupid will happen to me. Such as, he hardly made sense, like he was talking to two people and continually mixing them up. Dying is bad, right? The blonde chuckled. It wasn't funny. He toppled to the ground, his back planted in the earth as he looked into the sky. Non-existence is worse, I think. I'm not sure. I never died before, and this is unique. Thought I did die once though. Don't worry, you don't have to save the world or anything tough. He chuckled again. You should be trying to help me, she said sternly. Hey, from two sides. Oh, sorry, it's just hard to concentrate with two voices and this weird feeling, trying to keep Mito from knowing. She rethought her opinion of him. He might actually be partially insane. If he explained the bizarre things that were occurring, she might reevaluate. Find me, I don't know where though. I hear waves. Your plan C Mito, I don't think I can really depend on plan A saving my ass. Plan B is well, really fucking terrible. I can get back on my own but it'll be really risky. His words were spread apart, it took a lengthy amount of time for his to say a sentence. I have to find you. She asked, how did that work exactly? Yeah, there's not much his chakra dropped dramatically once again, just like when he appeared by the meadow. Or just keep me in Konoha and after a little scare everything will be fine. Find the 9 tails. What did the beast have to do with him? Such a horror that clearly revealed its tenacity and malevolence. God damn it, again. His eyes closed, his breathing returning to take deep breaths. His chakra reverting to when she had found him. She decided to seat herself on the grass. Today was rather a bizarre day. She had certainly seen odd things in her years as a kunoichi. A full brawl had been fought, each side with intent to kill and not a single person had died. Taken down by a formidable shinobi single-handedly. A chakra that surpassed the god of shinobi. To be so close to one was almost frightening. Does this mean he lost his memory again? She wondered how that all was possible, gain it back temporarily only to lose it once more. She stood up, finding that some of the others were making their way towards her. She would have to wait until he awoke. Naruto found himself in the dark once again. He landed on something soft and warm, a gasp escaped from it. Immediately, he knew where he was. Very soon after he heard the gasp, the side of his face exploded in pain as he once again fell from a height and landed on the floor in a heap. OWW, Mito, he complained, trying to soothe the pain by rubbing it. A bright white light shone out in front of Mito, easily repelling any darkness. It hovered above the red-haired woman, her eyes alarmed as they looked down at him. Widened in recognition, her hair messy from sleep and her nightgown hung just over her knees. Naruto. You're finally awake. Why are you here? What do you mean finally? Where the hell are we anyways? He asked. She smoothed out the lines of her nightgown before answering. You're in Konoha, safe and sound with no one trying to harm us. His panic must have been easily shown. He felt like he was being keenly observed. Her eyes catching everything. So, what's the last thing you recall? He frowned. When we were by the fire. That was more than 24 hours ago, Naruto, she yawned in exhaustion. I suppose it settles that, however. What do you mean? You've regained your memory temporarily. He was still on the ground clutching his face, but that was soon forgotten. How does that work? You didn't explain. I'm hating myself already. Does that make me self-conscious? She yawned in exhaustion. How about you go back to bed so that I can explain it to you in the morning? There was a knock at the door and Mito called for the person to enter. A white-haired man entered, facial tattoos on his cheeks, triangular shape that pointed downwards. He was in all black, cargo pants and a long-sleeve shirt. He crossed his arms and looking fairly imposing. Is everything all right, Mito? Your guest had awoke but fled before I could confront him. His voice was deep and serious. Seemed like a no-nonsense type of person. Something told Naruto that his demeanor was more severe than Mito's. Fine, I suppose. Can you please show him to his own room so that we may rest? Of course. He waited expectantly by the door. Naruto Uzumaki, this is one of our hosts, Tobirama Senju. Tobirama Senju, this is Naruto Uzumaki. Mito introduced the two of them. Hey, anything to eat? He asked. Tobirama nodded with yes, but also to acknowledge him. Naruto, I hope you can treat our hosts with tact and grace, his friend said. Well, to Naruto it felt like she would have added and emphasized more before the word tact if Tobirama wasn't standing in front. Sure, he replied, finally standing up. Good night, Mito. Good night, Naruto. He approached the door and exited, Tobirama closing the door behind him. He motioned to be followed and caught up next to him. They seemed to be headed for a second largest building. As he got closer, he noticed that there were 3 houses centered around a larger one. He saw a gate with a trail that led to the centerpiece, and the buildings themselves were on left, right and back respectively. Each building held patios with a section of the roofs covering them. 2 buildings on either side U-shaped with gardens and pools in the middle of them. He recognized where he had come from, a door slightly ajar from where he had slept. Someone was to keep watch on you inside your room so you wouldn't panic. It was fruitless, it seemed. Oh, was that you that was behind me earlier? He asked. I was. Yeah, you kinda scared the crap out of me. So why are you up so early, or late? Training. He didn't seem like a person that involved himself much in small talk. He was led to the second largest building, a simpler rectangular house. He entered along with the man, immediately smelling the food that was cooking. The room was large, with several long tables for many guests or people to feast in. There were other doors that he could guess that led to the kitchen and other things. I'll serve, so you may sit down, he said. He sat down on by one of the tables. Several minutes passed before Tobirama came back carrying a pitcher of water along with 2 bowls on a tray. He set it down and he sat across from him. It was quickly set up, his own steaming bowl of soup laid before him. Itadakimasu, it was quietly repeated by him, and they ate quietly for several minutes before the quiet man finally said something. So that jutsu, you teleported. Mito had said you called it the Flying Thunder God. He frowned at the name. He really thought that the name was cool. Yeah, I did. He didn't leave a whole lot to expand upon. It was more like he was being interrogated rather than spoken to. It's instantaneous, is it not? You utilized the jutsu before I could say a word, nor did I see any hand signs being woven. Yeah, no hand signs. Still, rather, it reminded him of something else that was shown to him in his dreams earlier before. Can I show you something that doesn't use hand sign either? If you wish. He continued to take small sips of his soup. Naruto held out his hand over his soup. The idea and principles of how to accomplish it came so naturally for him. A yellow spiraling orb appeared above his palm. It felt destructive. Tobarama curiously inspected. Interesting. I would imagine that you created it to complement your teleporting jutsu. No hand signs are needed so immediate strikes can occur, an interesting combination. Naruto could only blink a few times at him. He didn't think of that, but his amnesia was a great excuse. Yeah, guess I might have thought of that. My shinobi also noticed that you've mastered the shadow clone jutsu. I've developed that particular one. I'm unsure how you came across that one, yet, plenty of jutsu get stolen. He finished his dish then. The room you were in is yours. I've moved out the occupant that was keeping watch. I'm certain you can find it yourself. Have a pleasant morning. He left then, quickly depositing his dishes and leaving. He was alone then, before finishing up himself. He had found his stuff in the same room. Whoever was the person that was in room was now gone. He slipped into his bed, wondering how sleep was supposed to claim him. He had apparently rested for at least some time, blacking out with no memory, again. That didn't sound good, it slightly disturbed him. He awoke to a brighter room. He was lucky he supposed, thinking of all the mundane things made him bored enough to sleep. He heard some footsteps of someone walking by his room, some doors sliding open and the small talk being exchanged. He looked around for his clothing. Where the hell is my jacket? Even after some thorough searching he couldn't find it. He opened the door and immediately the talking halted. Two women stopped, their gazes turned to admiration. It baffled him as to why that was occurring. They were soon knocked out their stupor. Naruto. Thank goodness you're. I wanted to say thank you. A wide smile as she bowed deeply and repeatedly. He was left standing awkwardly. You don't. He noticed, however, that her eyes were watery, a tear trailing down her cheek. You saved my little sister's life, she said, stopping. Mentioning to the person beside her. She blushed heavily, averting eye contact and looking down. Thank you, she said rather quietly. It was uncomfortable for him, knowing that he had no recollection of any events. No problem, but I gotta go. Thank you, really, from the bottom of my heart. He heard it echo from behind. Focusing on finding Mito and finding out what exactly happened. He could feel the seal being centered around the kitchen he was in last night with the serious guy. He passed by several girls who gushed. The Uzumaki ones he barely knew suddenly grabbed him for a hug or a two-handed handshake. The less sentimental ones gave nods of acknowledgement. There was still several gazes following his every move as he walked to the kitchen. He saw the smoke rising from the building in the cloudy expanse of Konoha. Hearing the busyness of the town beyond the walls. Walking upon the dark wood of the patio of the house, hearing the sounds of conversation within. Quickly, he found Mito sitting along with a few other people before he being spotted. Crossing the distance, he noticed a few conversations have lulled when passed by, only to pick up once more. Mito's companions move away as she said a few indiscernible words. Sitting across from her, he took a moment to find out what he wanted to say. Which was instantly, what the hell is going on? Her raised her brow. Her facial expressions were always expressive. It conveyed a feeling of mild annoyance, expectedness and sheer interest. His mild cursing was ignored instead of being scolded for his use of language. He wondered if she simply accepted that fact about himself. We were attacked, you don't even remember that? No I don't. He sighed, his thumbs resting under his chin. He tried to remember as much as he could. A blank space. Her lips began to purse. You had your memories, you seemed quite certain of that fact. I did, huh? What did you learn? Like you said, you've neglected to tell me much of anything. I don't think you expected to lose your memory again. How convenient. He sighed. Tell me everything. She quickly glossed over it, filling in his blanks. The actions he had done, and how easily he had done it. He frowned deeply. I don't understand why I let them go. I mean, they were the ones who attacked us. He whispered. What the hell was he thinking? He saw Mito's expression change into one of devoted interest, eyes clear sparkling. Yet, she said nothing. It was so obvious, she might as well tap her chin and outwardly say, interesting. Then there was that action she always did, biting the inside of her cheek. Looking over the interior of the kitchen. More Uzumakis cluttered the hall than the new senjus. There was curious glances sent in his way. Hearing the news of his apparent heroism, waiters and waitresses continued to fly in and out of the kitchen. One stopped by his table and dropped off a tray filled with food. There was a feast prepared for our return. Mito started as she gave him a plate as well, one for herself. It was supposed to be filled with the clan leaders that make up the village, but he continued to nibble on his food, wanting at least some distractions, and well, he liked her company. It's confusing about how I should refer to you. Taking a few small polite bites. She shook her head and continued. When you had showcased your chakra pool, it was felt from Konoha, beyond perhaps. So that caused a bit of a stir here. Oh, yes, the difference was that it was felt from non-sensory types. So you can imagine the reaction. He pictured someone tripping like Tobirama falling over nothing. It was an amusing thought for someone so serious. She continued to talk. I hope that you'll amuse me one day to see whether that large of a buildup was really necessary. He thought absently about how much the food would have tasted far better than the breakfast than he was having. So what about the feast? Will be redone, I was told by tonight. It was something that made his stomach grumble in anticipation, only to be ruined when he tasted the mundane breakfast again. So, since we're here, is there anything that I should be worried about? Rules and restrictions. Stay within the grounds, no noise, lights out and in bed by sundown. He nearly choked when she said it, only to find her bearing a small smile. It was rather new, and he was almost tempted to make fun of her lack of humor. He chuckled, barely resisting making a jab. No, none so far that I have heard of. Other than to keep clear from the grounds of different clans and other restricted areas. Avoid doing that, check. He stood up with a flourish. Sitting around with people constantly giving him looks filled him with unease. The desire to escape from the gazes was immediate. Turning towards Mito, he asked a suggestion. So, wanna go see what Konoha has to offer? It will be my pleasure. He felt this pressure, an uncomfortable feeling of anxiety. Like his brain was filled with some unknown weight. He guessed that the total feeling of looming disaster had gone, only to be replaced by that stress. It was definitely more prevalent now. Still, he walked with Mito, taking in whatever interesting sights that Konoha had to offer. The village was easily larger than the Uzumaki, and only growing still. There was much less construction than he saw. Mito dropped some information. The Hashirama had the power to create houses in mere moments. There was plenty of places for entertainment and restaurants, and the like. He easily passed the time with her. She gave more detailed accounts of what had transpired since he had blacked out. Do you think that Hyuga woman is here? I don't know. He lied. Naruto was certain she wasn't around. Perhaps I can see if Hashirama could let us visit them. She replied. He wasn't intent on keeping this line of conversation any longer. Or any product of his memories actually. Hey, let's try something. How about until the end of next week, we try and not talk about any of that, or attempt to try and find out what's wrong with my memories. She looked at him then, her pursed lips with some concern in her eyes. Something wrong? He asked. She said nothing as she tried to formulate her words. Even when she spoke, there were pauses and weird facial gestures. I wasn't certain how to bring this up, but you said when you had your memories, you said a few things that were a bit alarming. Obviously I will help, but I wasn't sure as to how at the moment. So I guess I was waiting until I thought I could. He blinked several times at her tirade. That's a lot of words that didn't really go anywhere, did it? She looked ahead, face suddenly turning stoic and voice mechanically. You said that if you weren't returned to normal in less than 6 months you were going to die. Oh, I guess that kind of sucks then, huh? He couldn't identify what he felt. She stopped in her tracks, and he only noticed a moment later. She seemed upset. You okay? She bit her lip, and he felt like she wanted to say something. Nothing. Her pace was quicker than before as she passed by. He lamented about the red head beside him. A realization struck him, or more as a slowly dawning fact. She never really revealed much about herself, it went towards more someone else when he tried. He was tempted to ask about that, but felt it more wise to be quiet about it. There was hardly any small talk, that slightly bothered him. He enjoyed filling the silence, but he just accepted it for now. So they spent the last half hour exploring until it was time to return to the compound. He could feel his stomach violently grumbling. Mito stood beside, who raised an brow at the noise. He shrugged. What? I'm feeling tender. Like others within the room, he waited in the lobby near the closed doors. He heard the fragrance of the food from the kitchen, making his stomach growl continuously. It was a few minutes later until the doors finally swung open. There stood a plentiful amount of individuals. He recognized Tobarama, but not the others. The talking of the crowd lowered into murmurs as one standing beside Tobarama began to talk. Come, Mito said softly. The introductions or whatever was happening seemed to have finished when he arrived near the forefront of the crowd. He missed whatever that was being discussed, as satiating his hunger was the most important thing at the moment. Good evening, He rolled his eyes as the formalities rolled out. He partially paid attention, mimicking Mito's movements and introductions. He only remembered the descriptions of them: the blond man, the fat man, the tall man. They were supposed to be important, clan leaders, he guessed. The stoic, hard-pressed white-eyed caught his attention, however. There was the Byakugan. The tall, serious black-haired old man looked like he carried no emotion whatsoever. How anyone could be so empty-looking was beyond him. He was instantly relieved to find that eating was well within his grasp. He shook hands with Tobarama, giving only a nod. So, you are the one who single-handedly stopped those attacking shinobi. Again, this person was tall. He had darker skin, with his hair long and tied back. He seemed slightly less serious than some of the others before him. My name is Hashirama Senju, and on behalf of the Senju accompanying you, I thank you. Thanks, as he finished the handshake he proposed. There was an odd feeling as he did so. It was one that he couldn't describe. Hashirama felt it too, judging by his expression. They blinked several times in unison. Have I met you before? Naruto asked. No, I don't think so, he sounded uncertain. Weird, and he nodded in agreement. The Senju clan leader composed himself. Mito, a pleasure seeing you once again. I hope that both of you will join me. She gave a confirmation, before Hashirama began to talk to the mixture of Senju and Uzumaki shinobi. Not long after, the large wooden doors opened with a flourish as people began to pour inside. That was very odd, Mito commented. You noticed that? You both stood there for several seconds in total silence. He sat down to where he was led. Mito sat down beside him as plenty others filtered into their seats, monotonously following the redhead's lead, whatever they were. It really did feel strange, especially today. There was a massive cliff face that looked so wrong, the date looking incorrect. At one time he thought he trailed down a familiar belonged here, but he didn't. He knew he was right, but he would keep it to himself. A bowl settled down disturbed his thoughts. Peeking around, he saw the distinct lack of the other clan leaders. Where did those heads of the clans go? They left, as they had business to attend to, Hashirama answered. His mouth watered as he looked down at his food. He noticed that others had already began to eat. He picked up his own utensils as he mumbled a thanks of food. He ate to his heart's content, which meant stuffing his face quickly. He then noticed the others' stares. Mito's embarrassed look, Tobarama's stoicism and generally unimpressed look. Hashirama, however, looked mildly impressed. He felt Mito's foot lightly nudge against his. He definitely wasn't going to apologize. It's really good food, he commented, before launching himself into his bowl once again. I bet no can beat my hunger and speed right now. Here, try this. Hashirama placed another bowl near him. He rejoiced, as it was his favorite dish. He quickly took a few bites of it before he spoke once again. Can I ask something of you? Yeah. Go ahead. How about a simple game of who can eat the 3 bowls the fastest? He was actually stunned, not only him either but Mito too with her eyes wide. Tobirama's reaction was also comical too. A frown as he rubbed a palm on his forehead, a exasperated sigh escaping. He laughed. Here I thought this place was boring. Hashirama smiled. There definitely needs to be some liveliness at times, so it won't get a little dull. He motioned at a servant, who disappeared and later brought several plates out. Okay. Whoever finishes these 4 bowls first wins this. Ha! I won. He gladly took the small bundle of ryo laid on the table. Hashirama looked slightly disturbed in his loss. He saw some of the curiosity shy away now that the action died down. Several others had joined in as well, bidding with one another. Mito had calmly and ignored the rambunctious event, so did Tobirama. Don't feel bad, I don't think anyone can beat me at eating ramen, he commented. So, I've been really curious, how did the village get formed anyway? He tried to take away the feeling of loss that he inflicted upon Hashirama. It wasn't the clan leader that spoke, but his brother instead. It wasn't entirely purposeful, it was years ago, this group of shinobi appeared, extremely skilled shinobi with an arsenal of Kekkei Genkai. They intervened in a fight between the Uchiha and Senju and were powerful enough to kill our father and the former Uchiha clan leader. They caused enough worry that both clans banded together to fight the threat, but they disappeared when we did so. We laid in wait for their return, but others had heard of our truce and several flocked to us to join. Eventually a village had formed. Hashirama joined. That's the incredibly short version and doesn't have the intrigue and grandness in the way I tell it. Oh, he replied, as both brothers bickered with one another. Eventually, however, he noticed people leaving. The feast seemed more lax than he initially thought. Naruto, hearing the soft voice of the woman beside him. I want to talk to you for a bit. She stood up, and waited courteously for him. He assumed somewhere privately, so he got and followed her out. He was uncomfortably full. The thought of eating more food unsettled him. Small clutters of people walked out about the courtyard of the estate, either walking back to their rooms or to simply explore for a bit. He walked along with Mito. She hid her yawn. Was it really that late? It couldn't be past 9. I don't quite understand why he did that. Rather childish, don't you think? He expected something other than that. You're talking to me, I took part in it, he replied. I meant Hashirama suggesting the game, as well as the betting. He mused thoughtfully for a bit. Nah, I think I get it, you know. Well then, care to enlighten me? It's a sort of way for several people to bond together, I guess. Some light-heartedness, honesty and joking makes people at ease. It must be exhausting if everything is so serious all the time, not to mean that Hashirama can be the type of person, I've seen him act too. Like with the Hyuga, honestly that guy looked so serious. Even I felt like my soul was being sucked out in his presence. I suppose. She went silent for a little while. That's not what I wanted to talk about, however. He stayed silent, so she continued. She looked almost apprehensive, for some reason. You asked me to help you, so that's what I intend to do. Unfortunately, we've just arrived here, so I would like to wait a bit before asking anything. A couple days at most. I've also promised that you might be able to help with that broken seal of yours. Okay, he replied. It was plenty to take in. That's all right, I'm sure there's a lot to think about. Quote, you've placed your faith in me, I don't want to let you down. There was a ferocity in her eyes, vibrant as her hair. She also seemed uncomfortable, judging by her change in position of weight. He smirked. I don't think you need to worry about that, Mito, you'll do fine. If she was going to say anything, it was interrupted by someone who jogged up to them. He easily recognized him as Nori. Hey, Naruto, Mito. Would you two like to grab some drinks or something for a bit? He went silent as he waited for a reply. He looked odd, a faint smell of sake lingered from him. Isn't there a shinobi code to not drink? His brain was all funky. He definitely didn't recall that recently. He guessed he could go, but he felt strongly and enthusiastic about indulging in the hobby or whatever. Sure, I guess. Mito looked apprehensive, some disappointment tantamount. It looked like it was directed at him. Her critical eye judging him severely, before giving a curt reply. I'll pass. She walked on ahead, towards her one room. Nori was unabashed and merely looked back at him. Ready? He asked. Sure. He nodded as he walked with him towards a particular group of people, a mix of Senju and Uzumaki. It was late, and he was tired. The night had started good, then depressed into an annoying event, then into a more fun evening afterwards. He hung around the drinkers at first. The women got all so touchy and feely, one tried to kiss him. Her own form of thanks, she had explained. That made him uncomfortable, so he got away from the more drunken crowd and retreated into the sober group. It ended in a more enjoyable night. He just felt tired after all that time. He entered his room and quickly got undressed, when he noticed something odd. Where the hell is my jacket?